Welcome everybody to this Twitter space on advancing civic rights and strengthening democracy. My name is Paul Ulele, and this event is being held on the margins of Martin Luther King Day. For our listeners who might be in Nigeria, Martin Luther King Day is a holiday that's observed every third week of January, every third Monday of January in the United States, and it's a tribute to the civil rights icon Martin Luther King, who fought for civic or civil rights of Black Americans in the 1960s. And with the idea of idea of that holiday, birthed the idea of this program on advancing civic rights and strengthening democracy in Nigeria. Today we have our three guests in the building. I'm waiting for the third one to join in as well, but let me introduce them. The first person we have is Oluseun Onigbinde, Onigbinde, the global director for Budget Nigeria. Oluseun is a prominent figure in Nigeria's civic realm, co-founding the organization to bolster fiscal transparency and institutional accountability. Oluseun has general accolades from Ashoka Fellowship and the Quartz Africa um, 30 Innovators Award. Oluseun also holds a master's degree in international policy and practice from, funny enough, my alma mater, George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Um, Thank you and welcome to the show. Our next guest is Omolara Balogun. Um, Omolara Balogun is the head policy influencing an advocacy unit for the West Africa Civil Society Institute, WASI, and she joined the institute in November of 2009. And lastly, our guest is Amina Miango. Um, She's the project lead for the election project at the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development, CJID. Amina is a trained lawyer, chattered a mediator, and election expert with over a decade of experience in election administration and management. Welcome all to this panel.
Thank you,
Yes.
Paul. Thank you for
Yes,
having
yes.
me.
Welcome all to the show. I'm trying to still get Omalara on board. I see she's in the chat. Please let me know if you've received the invite to speak, because I've sent that to you. Um, but thank you all and welcome to the show. So let's get right into it. Um, so civil rights is of course a civil rights and advancing democracy or strengthening democracy is one of the major topics on board today. And Nigeria is one area or one country. Welcome Omalara to the show. I've seen you're up now in the panel, and Nigeria is a country that is, you know, that practices, of course, the democratic style of government and is in its advancing stages of advancing of a democracy. So, I guess the first question to the panel to start off is how can Martin Luther King's philosophy of nonviolent activism, how can that be applied to advance civic rights in Nigeria? Um, one of you could start off. I'd say Oluseun, you could start off.
Right. So apologies. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
I mean, just say apologies if I'm not able to stay too long on the call. But I might just say that Martin Luther King is a great inspiration of mine. And then remember when I read his book, um, the autobiography of Martin Luther King. I mean, That was a life changing, a very life, I mean, life changing book. And just about his power of oratory, his power of action, and specifically and his persuasive arguments on the need for us to push non-violent activism, non-violent movement, and also how that is a form of strength and how we lay down an argument that resonates heavily with me, and I found it very, very useful. It's been helpful in my life, in my organization, in how we think through things. But try not to. We're not violent. We're not threatening, if I use that word. And I won't say those who apply extreme measures. I won't say they're doing it wrong. But I would just say that this is the best form of government approach, non-violent, data-driven, fact-based, and strong narrative around how things should improve in the society. So personally, it's been a great inspiration for me, and it's been a great guide in how I've been able to tease out or develop my work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. So Omalara, do you have any thoughts on the on Martin Luther King and how his philosophy of nonviolent activism can be applied in Nigeria in the advancement of civil rights and even strengthening democracy in the country?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Um, I think Nigeria has a very rich history of some of the values that Dr. Martin Luther King held in high esteem when it comes to applying nonviolence to protest and making demands and requesting for accountability from power holders. And this we can see in some of the past and even recent agitations and requests and protests that we have seen across the country, not only in Nigeria, I would say across West Africa, which I'm pretty familiar with. Some of the things or factors that we have seen when non-violence is applied to civil rights is that it creates opportunity for many other people to participate in such a movement or such accountability process or democracy process. It has been a very peaceful and a very peaceful tool that is grounded in love, and it's been used to driven social change across board, especially where we have people, a section of the community or society that would normally not want to participate in such an advocacy or accountability demands process. Nonviolence utilizes more of dialogue and negotiation approach to making demand and fostering communications between power holders and the duty bearers and then the citizens. Um, so I think it's a very resilient tool that I believe that even over the years in Nigeria has been adopted, particularly creating rooms for mutual and further negotiations where demands and supply sides, have to engage on some of the critical needs, critical social needs. I think I'm going to leave it there for now. It's a tool that we've used over the years.
Okay, thank you for that. Quite briefly, let's and Amina, if you also want to chime in on this, but quite briefly, yeah.
Yeah, sure. For me, I think one of the lessons is how nonviolent activism can, help in being consistent with advocacy for civil rights. It helps in maintaining momentum. It helps in advocacy, and it helps in continuous advocacy. Unlike if you decide you want to go the hard way, there's no way you can maintain such such method, and you end up destroying society at the end of the day. So I think one of the big lessons is how his non-violent was achieved.
Yeah, your phone is breaking up. Your phone is breaking up, but thank you for that. Um, so the next question is what lessons, and any of you could chime in at any point on this. What lessons from Dr. King's leadership in the U.S. civil rights movement can be adapted? I mean, we of course we've already discussed nonviolence, but um any other lessons that could be learned from his leadership, and how can that be applied in addressing uh democratic challenges or in Nigeria?
No, I mean, let's be honest. The ideas of Martin Luther King are time tested, and I think and the reason why we say they are time tested is because they're also contextual. Let me put it that way also, because it was in a time when his humanity, his sense of worth, his identity was being degraded, was being undermined, was being understated, and he had to fight back. And even when he had to do all of that, he had to do it with a level of compulsion, with a level of respect, and all of that.
Yes, yes, yes. And I agree with that. You talk about composure, respect, that is, and some may get frustrated, at having to be calm in the midst of chaos. I mean, even when you look at the NSARS protest that happened like 5 years ago, when people went into the streets, and they were calm and they were peaceful, but then violence still erupted. So to some people, they could be like, "Hey, I mean, I tried the peaceful approach, but it only led to people chasing me down the street with a gun and a machete or stuff like that. So how can I try the peaceful approach while the peaceful approach is not working? You understand?"
Yeah, but I mean, in democracy does not allow you, does not give you the latitude to do anything else more than a peaceful approach. Because if you try a different approach, you might find yourself being incarcerated. Even your agenda or your idea might even become now even a threat to the state. The thing about democracy is that you are guaranteed a long form of patience, because you would have to constantly engage the system, constantly put the pressure on until you're able to get the kind of results. And I think that's the cost of democracy. It doesn't allow us to take other extreme measures. You could protest, you could, block the roads, you could do all of those things. But I think those ones are still within the rules of engagement. Those were the things that Martin Luther King still did. But say you were going to kidnap somebody, or we're going to take an act of violence against somebody, those are not the fundamental principles of democracy. So as I said, the things that Martin Luther King did were time tested, even beyond the apartheid, even beyond the civil rights crisis issues. They are still what are still the most useful tools to apply within a democratic system. And it's something that we must come to respect. And that dialogue, forbearance, patience, norms building, those things are extreme, and legislations. Those things are extremely critical in whatever we're trying.
So, what role does active civic engagement play in strengthening democracy in Nigeria? What active role can civic engagement do in that regard to strengthen democracy?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking, but I guess there was delay somehow. So yes, I definitely agree with the points that Sharon raised in terms of um, some of the lessons that we have learned from the work of Dr. King. I think there's one of his speeches where he said that I, if I could record clearly now, injustice anywhere uh, is a threat to justice everywhere. I mean, he wasn't a selective leader or a selective advocate. Most of the issues that he stood against or stood up for were not issues that affected him alone in person. He took on the injustices of others, and I think that's a very strong lessons for contemporary advocates and young activists, and we can see that play out. I think a lessons from work that I found to be quite intriguing, which perhaps may not be so common these days, is the act of actually living to your words, living by example, telling integrity, that commitment to justice, standing through to your word is something that stood out very strongly in his work and his life. And it's a lesson that we preaching even to younger activists today. He also, I a lot of leveraged, lots of networks, engaging different brackets of people across races and religions and political affiliations, if you like. I think those are very emulatable lessons and approach to civil rights movement. Maybe just to mention very quickly to the last question you raised around the role that active civic engagement plays in strengthening democracy. Democracy is about engagement. It's rooted in negotiation of ideas, exchanges of informations and all of that. And where engagement takes place, then accountability will take place. It means somebody is questioning someone. Somebody is asking whoever it is, duty bearers, policymakers, on why one or two things are not done. There are questions around social issues, social contracts, question around development. But in a situation where nobody's asking questions and nobody needs to feel guilty for not delivering their duties or mandates or delivering democracy, so I think for me, active civic engagement is one strategy for fostering accountability in a democratic settings. It also creates opportunities for different actors, different stakeholders to participate in affairs, in affairs of their own lives, to contribute to their own development, their own governance. All of this can only happen where there is active engagement. It also prevents, I don't know how to call it now, a situation whereby one person dictates the life of others, especially now that we are seeing a lot of authoritarianism across the regions and our neighboring countries.
Yeah,
First thing it tries to do is to stop people from actively engaging the state governance structures and institutions.
yeah.
So I think it's a critical tool, a critical element in any functional democracy. Active civic engagement is important. I'm going to leave it there for colleagues.
Yeah. Um, in terms of the key challenges, because we talk about civic engagement and the role it plays in strengthening democracy, what are the key challenges now that Nigeria does face in protecting, civic rights, and how can communities incorporate principles to foster inclusivity and social justice? And anyone can respond to what I just what I just said. So how can Nigerian policymakers incorporate principles to foster inclusivity and social justice in response to, tackling key challenges that Nigeria faces in protecting civil rights?
Okay, if I may just go very quickly because I'm actually behind wheels. Sorry. Um, I think one major challenge that we are seeing, and again, not only in Nigeria, is shrinking civic space. The space which used to be pretty much open for different actors, citizens, civil society, human rights defenders, advocates, activists to speak and raise their voice, to express themselves, freedom of speech, of expression, to demand their rights is fast closing in Nigeria and many other countries across the globe, I dare say. And that's in itself, it's a major challenge for advocates to advance the work that they do, especially those who stand in the gap between the marginalized or the or those who are being who are living in the fringes of the society. And the protection of that space is it's key, for the Nigerian government and other regional governments at a time like this, where we are seeing arbitrary arrest of advocates and activists, where the state continue to use the military and security agents to gag up protesters, where the media do not enjoy, the freedom of expression and free press as it used to be. All these are major challenges that contribute to the kind of social injustices that we are facing. And I think I raised a question around human rights violations, and then the security concerns, and maybe in addition to that will be the weaknesses of our institutions, various governance institutions, from the electoral to judiciary, and just name it. All of these challenges contribute to social injustices, and government needs to pay attention to it, foster collaborations with different partners, different stakeholders, civil society, private sector, if you like, development partners, to ensure that this space, the civic space, remains open for engagements. People's rights, human rights are protected, and the security concerns are also addressed, in a long term approach. Over.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for that. Olusegun, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of the challenges and how Nigeria can incorporate principles to bring people together and promote social justice? How can they create that environment of inclusivity between all people from walks of life? Hello, Lucian, are you there? Well, in any case, let's move on to the next question. In terms of how can communities in Nigeria mobilize around the issues of civic rights? I think there might be some connection issues again to the people listening, and there might be like feedback problems. So maybe some of the speakers might have to jump in and out if there's some connection problems. But for the ones that are still on the panel, um, how can communities in Nigeria mobilize around the issues of civic rights?
Well, I think for me as a mainstream, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I think for me as a mainstream activist, I see. growing trend of digitalizing, digitalizing, I would say, mobilizations for civic rights, which is good. I mean, we didn't have most of the tools that we have now back in the days when I was in student unionism and all of that. But I think right now, having the digital tools at our disposal that can be easily leveraged, we need to combine that
Yeah.
with some.
Before you go ahead, Olusegun, I think your mic is on. Please, can you mute for a second? Can you mute for a second? Thank you. Go ahead, Omalara. Thank you.
Yes, I was saying that, yes, thanks to the fact that we have digital tools and digital platforms that are increasingly being used to mobilize around social, civic rights issues and all of that. But I think it's important for us not to neglect the old and traditional means of mobilization, because the data are quite clear. I think in Nigeria we have about 47% of Nigerians having access to internet, which means if we stick to using digital tools to mobilize across community, we have over 50% of the population automatically excluded. So I would say at this juncture, it's important for us to begin to utilize some combinations of tools, such as leveraging local networks of women's, market women's, youth networks at the very grassroots level, you know, bringing some elements of face-to-face conversation cannot be undermined when we're talking about the works of Dr. Keynes. I mean, he moved from places to places, speaking to different groups of people, leveraging different networks of workers, and yet, workers and movement. I think it's important. We also need to I would say, emphasize the act of unity. If you're very familiar with Nigeria, I mean, we understand that there are key tools that have been used for division over the years. It should not be new to any activist, be it new, younger or older activists. The tools such as religion, ethnicity, what else? Political affiliations and all of that. I'm for NPP. Sorry, I'm for what are the part PDP and the like. Sorry, I live in Ghana, so and we just concluded our elections. So I'm mentioning the Ghanaian political parties. You know, the use of political parties to divide us, religious affiliation to divide us, and all of that. So we should know all these things and move beyond those usual rhetorics, and leveraging the cliques that we have on the ground. The student unionism used to be so great. I mean, I'm a product of student
Yeah.
unionism. It's clearly not what it used to be in my days about 2 decades ago. These are platforms that we need to revigorate, and tapped into, because their students are very green. They haven't tasted the madness of the macro society. They need ideas, histories, stories, and some of the tools that were used in the past and proven to be successful. So I think these are few points that should be explored for that to be advanced.
Yeah, yeah, that's good, and I totally agree. Olusegun, I think your speaker was you were on mute before, but do you have any thoughts on this on what Omalara has added as well, in terms of how communities can get together in mobilizing or mobilizing around the issues of civic rights? Yes. Hello, Olusegun. Are you still there? Well, I mean, not. Are you? Is your connection better now?
Can you hear
Yes,
me
I can hear you.
now?
Yes. So do you have any do you have any idea in terms of how communities in Nigeria can mobilize around the issues of civic rights? Continuing on from the conversation that uh um um Omalara initially brought up. in terms of her saying that she was a product of student unions and everything. How can other communities in Nigeria also contribute or mobilize around this issue of civic rights?
Okay. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Paul. I think the foundation of any community mobilization to is civic education, and so we need to start from there. You need to equip individuals with knowledge about rights, about their responsibilities as citizens um, of Nigeria, and also on mechanisms available to you know to resolve those issues and mobilize around civil rights. I think that's the first point of call. And like Obolara mentioned, our traditional institutions are very important in this regard because if you've done advocacy as um,
Yeah.
grassroots
You seem to be
institution,
breaking up.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you seem to be breaking up.
Okay,
I can hear you
sorry
now.
about that. Network is terrible.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, okay. So, like I said, we need to
Hello?
make use.
Yeah, Olusegun,
Hello.
just 1 second. You could put yourself on mute, but you could come right after. Amina, just 1 second. Amina, you could go ahead.
So yes, we need to um, mobilize our traditional mass communities where they operate, and through that we're able to better advocate. And I also think that communities with parallel issues, for example, let's use the Niger Delta, for example, the 6 states in the Niger Delta, communities with parallel issues like environmental degradation that affects livelihoods can mobilize and come together and advocate together. That way you're presenting a common force, be it requesting for 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 laws to be passed or for rights to be enforced. That way you're coming together as a united front instead of different having different silos of people requesting for the same thing. I think collaboration on such issues is actually a very good way to go to. Thank you.
Yes, and Olusegun, well, you could join in now if you're available. If your sound is back on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
I, di- I,
So
di- I didn't
yeah,
I didn't get a question.
so the question was, how can communities in Nigeria mobilize around the issue of civic rights? Yeah, I think his connection might not be great. So let's move on to the next question. Um, I mean, I talked about the parallels and talked about the Niger Delta region as an example. So it's interesting because what sort of parallels exist between um, the civil rights movement in the United States and Nigeria's fight for democratic consolidation. Consolidation, yeah. So, what parallels exist between the civil rights movement and Nigeria in the fight for democratic consolidation? And anybody could jump in.
I think a major parallel will be that both movements were fighting or are fighting oppressive institutions. When you look at um, for MLK and the civil rights movement in the US, it was about institutional oppression of Black people, Jim Crow laws that sought to exclude people on the basis of their skin. And when you look at the Nigeria's democratic consolidation, looking back towards the when we had military regimes, it was fight against military regimes that had oppressive laws against free speech, against association, and restricted those rights. So I think that's one major parallel. Also, you see that the movement was led by, on both sides, by mostly young people. Um, um, Martin Luther King died when he was 39, so he started, that was pretty young. When you look on both sides, you see that the movement was driven by mostly young people. We also have, of course, we've been talking about the nonviolent um, method of activism. I think that's a major parallel to both um, both movements were peaceful. They used the non-violent way to push for reforms, for institutional reforms for the US. Black people were able to get some basic rights institutionalized, and also in Nigeria, it led to return of democracy in 1999, and the work continues with, when you look at civil society, the work civil society does in advocating for either free speech or for human rights in different aspects of our lives, really. So, for me, those are some of the parallels that I see between the two movements.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to the final question. I do apologize. The network issues might not be great, or where some of our speakers are currently. Um, but the final question is: what practical steps can Nigerian citizens take today to emulate commitment to justice and equity as seen in more stable democracies? Um, Amina, if you're still there, you can go. What steps can Nigeria take to restore this commitment of justice and equity?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I still?
yes,
Can you still hear me? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So for me, one, when we look at how Nigeria is now, there's a lot of um, division. Um, People react to issues based on, um, you know, where their bias lies, where their bias basically lies. So I think we need to come to a point where um, we see justice and equity as something that everyone deserves, irrespective of where they are from, what religion they practice, what they look like, what their economic power is. It should be that where there is a right, there should be a remedy for infringement of that right. And if that's where we should start from. So justice shouldn't be selective outrage. It should be that where rights are infringed, people should look towards how those infringements can be remedied. And I also think as citizens, we also need to engage, in our governance. Um, that's one of the major
You,
responsibilities.
Omalara, I'm sorry, Amina, you're breaking up. Uh,
Oh God, can you hear me now?
yes, I can hear you. Yes, can you repeat what you said?
Okay, okay. I said all, all over again.
No, not all over again. Just the last part that you just.
Okay, okay. I said as citizens, we need to engage with our government. We need to hold our leaders accountable. We need to voice our concerns, irrespective. This is one of the major responsibility as leader, where as citizens. Sorry. So we need to support those who are doing the work the CSOs that are doing accountability work, those that are the community-based organizations, and then also we need to stop. We need to one of the ways to get engaged is choosing our leadership also. So these are some of the things that we could do practically to ensure that we there's justice and equity.
Okay. Omalara, are you there? Your connection.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, what steps can Nigeria take in really just restoring justice and equity to really be more or to be similar to stable democracies?
Yeah, thank you. I think when we are talking about democratic stability, a number of things are involved. A stable democracy is one that is inclusive, that recognizes different sections of the society in its compositions, participation, contributions, access, and what have you. So I think this is one step that we need to take or advance. We're doing it, but a lot more needs to be done. We need to advance as a nation. I think the second for me would be to look at some of the institutions that we have and undertake the needed reform. If we decide to continue to build the democracy that we've labored for over the years on current structures that we have, plus and minus its defects, I don't think we would see anything different as outcomes. So, from institutional reforms, governance reform, electoral reforms, judicial reforms, necessary reforms that can cushion a sustainable democracy. I think it's important for us to also pay attention there and make necessary investment. I think youth, as we have it, I'm not sure of the figure now, but I think we have about 60% or almost 60% of Nigerian population being above 30 or thereabouts. I'm not so sure now, but I know we have a very huge youth demographic that we need to engage, build their capacity, and get them into active not only socio-political and economic, participation, but political, participation and understanding beyond just social media banteries and all of that, how youth can actively. And that's why I do salute the work that the Not Too Young to Run group are doing, and so many civil society organizations that are being led by young people, the Youth Hub Africa, the work that they do, conscientizing, building capacity, connecting, building a very strong and solid political, foundation for young people to participate and contribute to their own life. I think it's equally important. I raised issues around alliances. I think this is really key. It has gotten to a point from my own observations that even the civil groups that we have in the country have become so aligned to one tribe, one ethnicity, one religion, and all of that, especially in the aftermath of the last elections. I think all those, differences need to be cut off. We need to come together and ensure that, those antics of divisions, be it as a result of how the last election went or some of the divisions around, we have quite a number of issues within the development space where you see a lot of civil rights, groups and actors. Without working together, believing and knowing that we are pursuing a common goal, it will be challenging for us to see any significant difference in our democracy. I think education, the role of education cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
We need the data, we need the information, we need the protection, we need the education from generation to generation, and also intergenerational dialogues. I think all these are critical, are factor that we need to consider.
Yes, thank you for that. And then I guess to wrap up, we open it up now to the audience. If you in the audience have any questions that you may want to ask the panelists, you are free to do so now. You could request, and I will bring you up to add to the conversation on this topic on advancing civic rights and strengthening democracy. What in your opinion, does that look like for you? What does a stable democracy in Nigeria look like for you? Is it does it look like uh, equality in all areas? Does it look like having no police brutality, and of course no one wishes on police brutality, but long story short is, what does a stable democracy look like, sorry, for you, for Nigeria moving forward? So if anyone in the comments, or in the crowd, want to ask the panel, please, you're free to do so now. You could request to come up, and I'll bring you up. Well, it seems like everybody might be shy and might not want to come on, and that's okay. That's fine. Um, I guess to wrap up, is there any is there anything that Omalar, that you want to add on this topic, or I mean, that you want to add on this topic in terms of what democracy for Nigeria looks like in the coming years?
Democracy for Nigeria, I think, in as much as Nigeria still stands as a democratic state, a lot of things are involved, and we need to pay very close attention, especially to things happening around us. Increasingly, and considering the strategic role we play within the region and on the continent, we are seeing a lot of democratic retrogression, especially within our neighboring countries, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and it has serious implications for us as a nation. As we are aware, Nigeria as a state is bordered by four Anglophone countries: Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Benin. So we can, the statement of Martin Luther King that I mentioned earlier, we until everyone has, peace, there is no peace anywhere, something around that, justice and all of that. So it's important that we play our role in ensuring that democracy is not only sustained in Nigeria, it is sustained in the region and on the continent. Because, I mean, what democracy means to me as a middle class person, uh, it could mean all this, grammar that we're speaking here. But to an average person on the street of Mali, on the street of Monrovia, or on the street of Lagos, it could just mean, having access to 3 square meal, and that's
Yeah,
it. Being able to go to the market and return peacefully without being, kidnapped, or without being subjected to one inhumane treatment or police brutality. For that person, that's democracy. To another person, is simply being able to write something on social media on how you feel about a particular situation, and you are not, you don't get missing, or something bad happens to you. That's democracy. So it has various elements that we as a nation need to keep building and sustaining. And to get there, the role of civil society and civil liberty organizations, activists, and social justice advocates, and organizations working around social justice issues, especially, cannot be undermined or overstated. It's important that they receive the support that they need. And one critical support that this, human rights defenders and all other groups I mentioned needs, is having that free space to do their work, bringing me back to the point around the shrinking civic space. And there's been a lot of tactics that is in, that are increasingly coming to the fore, issues around civil society regulations, registration bodies, and all of that is something that needs to be attended to almost immediately. In addition to that, the support that these groups need to work, the support, the capacity, the
Yeah.
resources. Where are those resources coming from? In the West, of course, you see most government providing some support to their civil society groups, to support the work that they are doing, because the contribution of civil society democracy is to complement the work of government. So that support needs to be there. It's not something that is readily made available in Nigeria. We need to look at that. And I think also the healthiness of the environment and the region in general, it's important. Nigeria needs to continue to play that strategic role in fostering regional peace, regional integration, and that particular role cannot be more needed than it is right now, that the regional economic bloc is actually falling apart. I think what becomes of ECOWAS, what becomes of our neighbors, has a significant impact on what becomes of our democracy. And be it in, out, or out, in, we need to fix
Yeah.
it. We need to continue
Absolutely.
discussing, intervene.
Absolutely. So yeah, regional peace, regional integration. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think you're unmuted. Do you have any
Yes,
last before
I'm
we
here.
quickly? Yep.
Yes, I do. Also, going forward, we need to keep advocating for strengthening our democratic institutions, be it the judiciary, which is the last protector of basic civil rights. We must strengthen our judiciary and insulate it from political interference and ensure that it is truly independent and has the necessary manpower and to protect civic rights. We also need to ensure that our legislature make laws that prioritize citizens' rights and also advance democratic principles. Very important. And also our electoral institutions, institutions like the human rights, national human rights, you know, commission that actually do the work of protecting human rights and civic rights. We need to strengthen all those institutions. Very important. And also, we need to also promote accountability in governance. Um, um, Ensure that policy making is inclusive, and also that we when people engage in acts that are detrimental to our institutions like corruption, that there is actually um, um, a way to punish those such acts, is regardless of who they are in our society. And also we have to
Hello. Hello. Are you still there? Your phone blacked out. But in long story short, I guess the summary of what you're saying is strengthening institutions and promoting accountability within leadership, which I wholeheartedly agree. We do have one question. Like I stated earlier, Miss Margaret Olele, she's in the audience, and she does have one question. Please unmute yourself and please ask your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm not sure if my question, if what I'm going to say is a question or a comment, and unfortunately, I didn't get to join early enough. But at the end of the day, it's really understanding the perception about democracy in the continent, and also specifically in Nigeria. Some people always think that the issues that democracy is alien to the culture, our culture. But I think we need to do a bit more in terms of really trying to understand um, the traditional democratic institutions that we've had over the years and to amplify those um, understanding so that we don't get to feel that, oh yeah, this is something that was brought upon us. That's the first thing. When we think about democracy and from the perspective of the civil rights, one of the things I found very interesting, and luckily I went on the day of the Martin Luther King's if the day in his honor. I went to the place where the hotel where he was shot. So it brought back a lot about how um the issue around non-violence is very critical in a continent that is there's a lot of turbulence around democratic institutions. I think that's one of the great learnings, that we can actually have a thriving democracy without having the violence that usually accompanies it from what we see in the continent, and in some cases in Nigeria, maybe during elections, where young people get involved. So I think there's a lot of learning, and I think there's a lot of work that has to be done in terms of advocacy around nonviolence, but ensuring that equal rights are maintained and people's rights are not trampled upon. When these things are happening. So these are just some of my thoughts. I don't know if this had been shared, but I just thought to put that in there.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes. Thank you so much. And yes, I do agree. In terms of the advocacy work, and in terms of also promoting the elements of nonviolence, and also having equal rights for every Nigerian. Um, I think we've touched on all that's really needed to be touched on in this hour of the Twitter Spaces event on advancing civic rights and strengthening democracy, celebrating the legacy of Martin Luther King. I do thank everybody who's been able to join today. To the speakers, Omalara Balogun, from of Watsi. She's based in Ghana. Amina Miyango from the Center for Journalism, Innovation, and Development, CJID. And also, I mean, he dropped off earlier, um, Mr. Olusegun Onigbinde, the director of budget. Um, Thank you all for adding your thoughts into this discussion. Of course, democracy still remains a huge a topic in Nigeria, and one hopes that with this element of democracy, that Nigeria will take heed to this system and further advance it from where it's currently at in 2025 to an even bigger and better system of government. This is what we hope, and this is what is the vision for all Nigerians. Like to also thank the partners at this, or for this event as well. The Center for Journalism, Innovation, and Development, CJID, as well, and their chatbot as well. They call Dubois. The Dubois chatbot verifies claims for audience who want to learn more about particular or specific fact checking fact checking information for certain cases or questions that do arise. So we do thank them as well for this, and we thank you all for listening as well. And we hope you have a good rest of your day.